You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and I'm actually going to start with hockey. The NHL season is ending this week. For some teams, it's already ended. And with that comes coaching changes. The first coaching change that I want to talk about is one that I said was in the offing for a while. And that is John Tortorella being fired as the head coach of the Blue Jackets. This is a good move. You could see that Tortorella's message was getting stale. The players just weren't believing in it anymore. It just wasn't working. The Blue Jackets were playing lousy hockey. They finished in last place in the Central Division. Technically, they had the same number of points as the Red Wings, but the Red Wings had 2 more regulation or overtime wins than the Blue Jackets, so the Blue Jackets did finish in last place. Their offense was atrocious. They didn't have a 20-goal scorer. They didn't have anyone exceed 45 points. Their goaltending wasn't awful. Jonas Korpisalo crashed and burned, there's no question. But Elvis Merzlikins had a good season. It seems like he's the future in net for the Blue Jackets, not Korpisalo. I mean, only 3 players, Eric Robinson, Michael Del Zotto, and Emil Bemstrom, finished with a positive plus-minus. The Blue Jackets were just a bad team this year. And at the end of the day, that does fall on Tortorella. A guy who, with the Blue Jackets, only won 2 playoff series. Granted, one was a magical sweep of the Lightning. No one expected them to win that series, let alone sweep. There were a lot of people that expected the Blue Jackets to be in the playoffs this year. To finish last in the division is unacceptable. To finish with the 3rd least wins out of all the NHL teams this year, yeah, that's not going to work. Tortorella needed to go. It's nothing against Tortorella. John Tortorella is a really good coach. If he still wants to coach, he'll get another opportunity. I mean, you're going to laugh at me for suggesting this, but how about a reunion with the Rangers? Think about it. Chris Drury's now calling the shots. He used to play for Tortorella. He was the captain. After going with an unproven coach in David Quinn and it not working, I'd be surprised if Quinn returned as Rangers head coach. Nothing is official yet, but I'd be surprised if he was the Rangers head coach next year. Go with an experienced head coach. Go with someone who won a Stanley Cup, someone who had success with your team, in John Tortorella. I do think it makes sense. The Seattle Kraken would make sense. If Tortorella wants a challenge and he wants some leash, go to the Kraken. See, the thing with a guy like Torts is he needs a big market. It's why it didn't work with him in Vancouver. That was never going to work. His shtick just wasn't going to work there. Oh, but Jacob, Columbus isn't a big market. There's nothing else to do in Columbus except watch the NHL. Yes, you've got some college sports, but the baseball teams are in Cleveland and Cincinnati. Same thing with the football teams. And the basketball team is in Cleveland. I mean, look. Cleveland to Columbus is over 2 hours. It's not much better from Cincy to Columbus. If you're a sports fan in Columbus, you've got OSU and you've got the Blue Jackets. Those are your local teams. Meanwhile, you look at Seattle, the Mariners are going to be off season. Obviously, you have the Seahawks, but that's 1 day a week. There will be a lot of people invested in the Seattle Kraken. Will they be as invested as they are in the Seahawks? Absolutely not. If they trade Russell Wilson, that may change, but that's not going to happen. The Kraken are getting good ticket sales. Don't you think Tortorella would like to be at the helm of that? I could see that working. Look, I don't know who the Blue Jackets are going to get to replace Torts. But as I've been saying for a while, it was time for a change. The message was getting stale. The writing was on the wall for a while that Torts was on his way out. But I promise you that Torts will land on his feet if he doesn't want to take some time off to be with his family. Moving on now to the Coyotes firing Rick Tocchet. And this one's a little harder for me to get behind. The Coyotes were in the playoff hunt for a while. Were they setting the world on fire? Absolutely not. But they were hanging in there. Darcy Kemper rebounded from his bad showing in the bubble to put together a good season, although granted he got hurt. Aiden Hill is a good young goalie. Phil Kessel's exciting. Jacob Chychrun's one of the best young defensemen in the NHL. Connor Garland is really underrated. Clayton Keller's really underrated. Same thing with guys like Nick Schmaltz and Christian Dvorak. The Coyotes weren't a bad team this year. But when you look at what Tocchet's done for the Coyotes, he's been there 4 seasons, only 1 playoff round victory, and that was in the qualifying round against the Predators. They got steamrolled by the Avalanche after that. I understand the decision to move on from Tocchet. I mean, you gotta realize their GM, Bill Armstrong, inherited Tocchet. That was a John Chayka hire. As we all know, GMs want to hire their own coaches. I'm not sure who Armstrong is going to go after. The obvious guy to look out for is Mike Yao. Former Blues head coach. Armstrong came from the Blues. Ken Hitchcock would make some sense, but it seems like the game has kind of passed him by a little bit. I'm not sure who the Coyotes are going to hire. As for Tocchet's future, I don't really see him latching on as a head coach again. He didn't do a great job with the Coyotes. If he wants to be an assistant coach, go for it. I mean, Rick Tocchet played in over 1,100 games. He has over 900 points. He wasn't an awful coach, he just wasn't a great coach. You can do a lot worse than putting Rick Tocchet on your coaching staff. That's his NHL future, an assistant coach. He can't be the head man again. I do just want to say this about the NHL. As I said, the season is over for some teams. Most team seasons are going to end either tonight or tomorrow night. And we have absolutely no idea what's going to happen with the playoffs. None whatsoever. We have a basic outline. We know the structure. And we know that it's going to start sooner rather than later. But we don't know specific dates. The NHL season is coming to an end. In fact, for some teams it's over, and we have no idea when the Stanley Cup playoffs are going to start. That's an issue. You've got to get this settled sooner rather than later. You're almost out of time. The Stanley Cup playoffs are the best playoffs in sports. I want to know when they're going to start. I mean, here's the thing. The NHL season was actually originally scheduled to end on Saturday. The playoffs were originally set to start tomorrow. Assuming the coronavirus cooperated, that's what was originally scheduled. Did we know that it was probably going to get pushed back? Yeah. But now it's gotten to the point where regular season games are actually set to end a week from Wednesday. The Canucks still need to make up their games. They still have 7 more games left to play. There is talk of certain divisions' playoffs starting before other divisions' playoffs. I get that logic, but here's the thing. That means that when the two divisions meet each other in the third round, the Stanley Cup semifinals, you're going to have one division exponentially more rested than the other division. That's not fair. You want to tell me that that can happen if one team sweeps their first 2 rounds and the other team has to go through 2 7-game series? Okay, I get that. But those teams earned that. They earned that through their play, not through scheduling foibles. I mean, realistically, this is what needs to happen. You've got to play all the games through Thursday. Because at the end of the day, we have meaningful games. The Wild and the Avalanche are set to play in 2 separate games. Those are meaningful. Once you get past that, stop it. The regular season is over. I don't care that some teams will have played less games. If it doesn't impact playoff seeding, it really doesn't matter. That's the most important thing. If you want to keep the Flames-Canucks games on the schedule, you can. Just realize that no one's going to watch it. It may not even be televised. I have no idea. Now, if you're looking at the schedule, you may see that the Maple Leafs are set to play the Jets on Friday, and the Canucks are set to play the Oilers on Saturday. For the Leafs and the Oilers, those games are meaningless. They are locked into their seeds. It does get tricky with the Jets. The Jets have clinched a playoff spot, but there's still a chance that they could fall to the 4 seed behind the Habs. However, that can work itself out. The Jets are set to play the Canucks tonight and tomorrow night. If the Jets win just one of those games, they will clinch the right to go up against the Oilers as the 3 seed. Now look, is there a chance that the Canadiens can fall out of the 4 seed? Technically, yes, but it's not going to happen. The Flames would need to win all their games, or the Canucks would need to win all their games, and the Canadiens would need to lose all their games in regulation. That's not going to happen. The simple fact is, there is a way for the regular season to end on Thursday, and nothing of real importance gets canceled. That means that the playoffs can start on, Friday or Saturday. And for the teams that played on Thursday, just have their series start on Sunday. That's okay. That makes sense. That can work. My way, you're starting the playoffs at the same time. You're not going to have meaningful regular season games happening at the same time as the playoffs. That's the thing. You can't have that. You can't have those long rest periods. It doesn't work for the teams. It's not going to work for the fans. So let me get this straight. The Oilers would need to play the Canucks on Saturday. Even though the game is completely meaningless for the Oilers, and the playoffs have already started, that's a possibility. I mean, I have no idea what's going to happen. I have no idea how quickly things are going to move, but I'll tell you, they've got to move sooner rather than later. Alright, now I'll give you some MLB Valk talk. Because I want to talk about the no-hitter that was thrown on Friday. Wade Miley no-hit the Cleveland Indians. And let me tell you, this was one of the more memorable no-hitters that you'll see. This game was scoreless headed into the ninth inning, you had Miley dealing. He had already lost the perfect game. Nick Senzel committed a throwing error, and Cesar Hernandez drew a walk. But other than that, Miley was perfect. But again, scoreless, headed into the ninth. We're reaching Harvey Haddock's territory. Zach Plesac, the Indians pitcher, pitched really well. He pitched 8 innings of shutout baseball, only gave up 3 hits. He had thrown 112 pitches, so Terry Francona went to Emmanuel Clace. He got absolutely shellacked. Allowed 3 runs to score. Didn't record an out. Phil Maton had to come in and put out the fire. But when the dust settled, it was 3-0 Reds, headed into the bottom of the ninth. Wade Miley is 3 outs away from throwing a no-hitter. He had kept his pitch count low, so that wasn't an issue. Rene Rivera came in as a pinch hitter. He flew out to Nick Castellanos in right field. Cesar Hernandez struck out, and Jordan Luplow grounded out to Kyle Farmer. That's how Miley got a no-hitter. But, like I said, he almost entered Harvey Haddock's territory. If you don't know, Harvey Haddock was a pitcher from the early 50s to the mid-60s. And he was a good pitcher, but he's most remembered for throwing 12 innings of perfect baseball. You've heard of 27 up, 27 down? Haddock's went 36 up, 36 down. But his team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, couldn't get anything going. They had 12 hits. Lou Burdett just shut the door when he needed to. Both pitchers pitched complete games in the Haddock's near-perfect game. No one remembers that. Not to get too into it, but Felix Mantilla reached on an error by the third baseman, Don Hoke. Eddie Matthews sacrificed him to second. Hank Aaron got intentionally walked. And Joe Adcock won the game with an RBI double. We almost had something similar happen to Miley. Fortunately, it didn't. It is May 10th, and we've already seen 4 no-hitters. Some people say that in order to increase interest in baseball, we need to have more offense. Well, hopefully that's not true, because 2021 is shaping up to be the year of the pitcher. Alright, now I'll give you some NFL Valk talk. And I'll start with the Texans bringing in Neville Hewitt. I saw more of Neville Hewitt than I'd care to admit over the past couple seasons. Greg Williams really liked him. I don't know why. Neville Hewitt is a good special teamer, but when it comes to actually playing defense, he is one of the worst linebackers in the NFL. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I saw Neville Hewitt drop back into coverage and get burned. The guy had a 59.3 overall grade according to Pro Football Focus. That should be about 20 points lower. People did say that the Jets could bring him back, since he was their leading tackler last year. okay, you're right that he was their leading tackler, but he was the leading tackler on a team that went 2-14. That doesn't mean he's a good player. You have no idea how happy I am to see Neville Hewitt not on the Jets. For the Texans' sake, I hope he's not starting. Let him be a backup. Let him be a special teamer. That's fine. That's his role in the NFL, and he's good at it. But when it comes to playing a bunch of snaps a game, no. You don't want him doing that. Moving on now to the Eagles claiming Kerryon Johnson off waivers. And this is kind of interesting. Obviously, the Eagles have Miles Sanders. And it seems like Sanders is going to turn into a solid NFLer. Nothing great, nothing terrible. They have Boston Scott, who's not a bad backup running back at all. They used a 5th-round pick on Kenneth Gainwell. Now they're bringing in Johnson. Competition for Scott, presumably. Let me ask you something. Who would you rather have, Kerryon Johnson or Boston Scott? Johnson's probably the bigger name, but let me tell you, you can make an argument for Scott. It seems like the league kind of figured Johnson out. Something tells me he's going to go the same way as Trent Richardson. Richardson, if you'll recall, had a good rookie season. He had 11 touchdowns. It looked like he was going to be a really good player in this league for a long time. Then he went to the Colts and it all went to hell. There's nothing against the Colts, it's just when you trade a first rounder for a guy who doesn't even make it 2 full seasons with your team, that's a bad look. The league figured Richardson out, and it seems like the league has figured Johnson out. After a good rookie season, he underwhelmed in his sophomore season. Then last year, he was really bad, only had 52 carries for 181 yards and 2 touchdowns. Nothing's going to be handed to Johnson. He's got to earn his way onto the Eagles. I don't know if he's better than Boston Scott. Does it make sense for the Eagles to bring him in? The answer is yes. Give him a chance. He still has some potential, but I don't think we're looking at the second coming of Brian Westbrook. Moving on now to the Steelers, bringing in another former Jet in Arthur Mallett. And I don't mind this move for the Steelers. Mallett isn't an awful player. Not great, but not terrible. Last year, according to Pro Football Focus, he had a 49.7 overall grade. That's probably a little low. I would have gone a touch higher. But I don't want to split hairs or anything. Mallett didn't set the world on fire with the Jets. There's no question about that. The year before, he did look good. Had a 65.2 overall grade. See, the thing with Mallett is the Jets kind of jerked him around a little bit. One game he played nickel corner. The next game he played safety. I don't like when teams do that. It's hard enough to prepare for one position. Now you're asking them to prepare for 2? This isn't the 1950s we're talking about. So look, I like Mallett. I think he can turn into a decent player. Definitely not Darrelle Revis, but definitely not D. Milliner. Let's put it this way. I'd rather have Mallett than Hewitt. I think that's the best way to put it. Moving on now to the Colts, bringing in Eric Fisher on a 1-year deal worth $9.4 million. You know what? Fisher's worth that. That's a really good move for the Colts. They had a glaring hole at left tackle. You gotta realize, Anthony Costanzo retired. So the Colts signed Sam Tevi away from the Chargers. Sam Tevi is not a good left tackle. According to Pro Football Focus, he had just a 52.9 overall grade last year. Now you're bringing in a guy in Fisher who 2 years ago won a Super Bowl, is coming off the best year of his career, according to Pro Football Focus, 80 overall grade. To add him to an offensive line that was already one of the best in football? Carson Wentz has to be doing backflips. No excuse for him, boyo, let me tell you. Think about this offensive line. Eric Fisher, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Mark Lewinsky, and Braden Smith. It doesn't get any better than that. That's now the best offensive line in football. All the pressure's on Wentz now. He's with a coach that he's had success with in the past. He has great weapons to work with. He has a great defense helping him out. It's put up or shut up time for Carson Wentz. But let me tell you, if Wentz can turn it around and get back to being not even great, just really good, the Colts could win the AFC South. That's how scary they are right now. Fantastic move by the Colts. Moving on now to the Chargers, bringing in Christian Covington. And I know why the Chargers did this. They needed to add some depth behind Linval Joseph. Covington has had success in the NFL before. Excluding last year, his lowest Pro Football Focus grade came in his sophomore year, 2016, where he had a 62.3 overall grade. That's pretty good. I'll take that. The thing is, though, he transitioned to being a starter last year with the Bengals, and we learned that he's not a starting caliber player. He had just a 51.8 overall grade. As a backup, Covington is fine. It makes perfect sense. The Chargers did need to add D-line depth. You just don't want him starting. Very similar to a guy like Neville Hewitt. You have to know his role. There was a death in the football world that I want to talk about. And that is the death of Jim Bertelsen, whose death was announced on Friday at the age of 71. From the late 60s to mid-70s, Jim Bertelsen was one of the better running backs in all of football, both college and professional. He went to college at the University of Texas, played for the Longhorns from 1969 to 1971. Obviously, he was coached by the legendary Darryl Royal. In Royal's wishbone offense, Bertelsen thrived. In 69, he led the Longhorns in rushing yards and touchdowns. They were the consensus national champions. The year after that, Bertelsen had another really, really good season. Did he lead the Longhorns in rushing yards or rushing touchdowns? The answer is no, but again, that wishbone offense, you're gonna share carries. Bertelsen finished 7 yards behind Steve Worcester for the team lead in rushing yards, and 1 touchdown behind Worcester for the team lead in rushing touchdowns. According to the UPI coaches poll, the Longhorns were the national champions that year. Most people, though, said that Nebraska was actually the national champs. The year after that, Bertelsen once again led the Longhorns in rushing yards, did not lead them in touchdowns, didn't come anywhere close. That was Donnie Wigginton. The Longhorns went 8-3 that year. So Bertelsen entered the 72 NFL draft and was taken in the early second round by the Los Angeles Rams. And with the Rams, he carved out a niche as a really good 1B running back. There was never a year in the NFL when he was the lead dog. The lead dog for the Rams was Lawrence McCutcheon, one of the best running backs of the 1970s. But don't sell Bertelsen short. He executed his role, and he did it really, really well. His first 4 years in the NFL, he had over 400 rushing yards. In 1973, he made the Pro Bowl. He had 854 rushing yards that year. Now, interestingly, if you look at Bertelsen's Pro Football Reference page, you'll see that he started most of the Rams' games his first 4 years in the league. That's because the Rams used 2 running backs in a style similar to Darryl Royal's wishbone offense. Chuck Knox ran an offense that had 2 running backs. You had Lawrence McCutcheon as the halfback and Jim Bertelsen as the fullback. If you wanted to make the argument that Jim Bertelsen is one of the best fullbacks in NFL history, you can. Bertelsen played from 72 to 76. His last 4 years in the NFL, the Rams made the playoffs every year. In his last 3 years, the Rams would lose in the NFC title game. So Bertelsen was a part of some really good teams. But that is the legacy of Chuck Knox. A good coach, a coach who can get you into the playoffs. You'll make some noise. You'll just never make a Super Bowl with him. He was Marty Schottenheimer before his time. Jim Bertelsen had a career that anyone would be proud of. A 3-year Letterman, made 2 all SWC teams, 3-time SWC champion, was inducted into the University of Texas's Hall of Honor in 1996. May he rest in peace. New York Yankees show comes your way tonight. Regular episodes of the Jacob Valk Show come your way every weekday afternoon. Until next time, I am Jacob Valk saying that the strike zone used to be from the shoulders to the knees. Now, it's the top of the belt buckle to the bottom of the belt buckle.